This video is intended to give you some basic and introductory knowledge to economics. I'm going to cover some basic concepts like scarcity and trade-offs, as well as some common models that you are bound to run into if you plan to study economics. To start off, I'll provide two simple definitions of what economics is. Now, keep in mind these are simple definitions, but they will help you gain an understanding of what it is you'll be studying when you study economics. So firstly, you could define economics as this. Economics is the scientific study of how individuals or firms optimize their lives in the face of limited resources / scarcity. Let me go through that one more time and break down some of the terms. Economics can be defined as the scientific study of how individuals or firms being companies or organizations, markets, countries, optimize their lives in the face of limited resources or scarcity. That is, things that are in limited amounts. Another simple and great definition of economics that I would suggest committing to memory is stolen from Thomas Sowell's book, Basic Economics. And it says, quote, "Economics is the study of the use of scarce resources which have alternative uses." Those are great to commit to memory, but they're only a basic definition of what economics is. So now let's take a look at reality to further our understanding of economics. So when we look at reality, we find that reality poses a fundamental problem. And the problem is this: resources like time, money, materials, those are finite. Humans' desires for those things are infinite. Again, to quote Sowell, he says, "What everybody wants adds up to more than there is." This fundamental problem can be titled as scarcity, and it is the driver of economics. The reason why scarcity is the driver of economics is because scarcity forces decisions. Let's take a closer look at exactly how scarcity forces decisions. So in a world of scarcity, the ability to make decisions, and good decisions at that, reigns supreme. To decide means to sacrifice one thing for another. As well, not to decide also means to sacrifice. So in a world of constraints on how much money one can attain, how much time one has in a day, or how many materials one can gather, people will try to optimize their lives in the face of constraints and scarcity. More simply put, I could say this: in a world of scarcity, humans experience constraints. In the face of constraints, humans carefully make decisions on how best they can optimize their lives. Again, to quote Sowell, he says, "Regardless of our policies, practices, or institutions, whether they are wise or unwise, noble or ignoble, there is simply not enough to go around to satisfy all our desires to the fullest. Unmet needs are inherent in these circumstances, whether we have a capitalist, socialist, feudal, or other kind of economy. These various kinds of economies are just different institutional ways of making trade-offs that are inescapable in any economy." The key word in that quote was trade-offs. So now let's take a more detailed look at trade-offs, and specifically perceiving decisions as trade-offs. So economics is about scarcity, and humans make decisions or trade-offs in the face of scarcity, and by extension, economics is about trade-offs. Now, trade-offs refers to this concept of giving up one thing to gain something else due to limited resources. A couple examples of trade-offs that you and I make most likely daily are sacrificing time to obtain money, sacrificing money to obtain time, spending money to obtain resources, or sacrificing obtaining resources to maintain money. Now, in order to make trade-offs, good trade-offs at that, one has to weigh and analyze the benefits of one option against the cost of foregoing another. More simply put, you can't have it all, so what should you have? A key to understanding trade-offs is understanding the relation trade-offs have to opportunity cost. Opportunity cost could be defined as this: the value of the next best alternative you give up when you make a choice or a sacrifice. The cost of anything is the value that it has in alternative uses. And again, to quote Sowell on the topic of opportunity cost, the real cost of building a bridge is whatever else could have been built with the same labor and material. This is also true at the level of a given individual, even when no money is involved. The cost of watching television is the value of the other things that could have been done in that same time. I want to read you a longer excerpt from Thomas Sowell's book, Basic Economics. It very nicely explains how economics is not necessarily about money, but more specifically about trade-offs. Money doesn't even have to be involved to make a decision be economic. When a military medical team arrives on a battlefield where soldiers have a variety of wounds, they are confronted with the classic economic problem of allocating scarce resources which have alternative uses. Almost never are there enough doctors, nurses, or paramedics to go around, nor enough medications. Some of the wounded are near death and have little chance of being saved, while others have a fighting chance if they get immediate care. And still others are only slightly wounded and will probably recover whether they get immediate attention or not. If the medical team does not allocate its time and medications efficiently, some wounded soldiers will die needlessly, while time is being spent attending to others not as urgently in need of care, or still others whose wounds are so devastating that they will probably die in spite of anything that can be done for them. It is an economic problem, though not a dime changes hands. Since that previous quote doesn't only deal with resources and who should get them, but also deals with ethics and morality, I think now is a good time to introduce the two types of study within economics. So firstly, we have positive economics. Positive economics has a focus on what is currently happening in the markets. It has a focus on facts, data, and relationships between events. On the other hand, we have normative economics, which focuses more on what ought to be happening in the markets or economy. Normative economics is more values-based. It's more opinion-driven, and it has more of a focus on potentials. Now I'd like to show you a common model that you're bound to run into while studying economics. It's called the production possibilities curve. The production possibilities curve is a systematized way of achieving maximum efficiency in the face of scarcity. It's a graph showing the maximum combinations of two goods an economy, or any entity, can produce with limited resources. It illustrates trade-offs and efficiency. It's a visual representation of the fact that making more of one thing means making less of the other. The curve on the graph plots the maximum combination of two goods that can be produced with a fixed amount of resources. The more extreme ends, all of one thing and none of the other, are in practice less efficient. This is due to people having different specialties and skills within a given country's workforce. A point within the curve is an inefficient allocation of resources. There will be resources wasted or left unused. A point outside the curve is an impossible allocation of resources. It's beyond the reality of what the producer can achieve given the amount of resources they have. The entire curve can shift outward with the increase of resources, or with an advancement in technology, for example, a more efficient way to use resources. Now let's take a look at a concept called comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is the ability of an individual, firm, or country to produce a good or service at a lower opportunity cost than others, making it more efficient for that individual, firm, or country to specialize in the production of that good and trade it for other necessary goods. A trivial example of this is if you're very good at computer coding and very bad at cooking, you might want to focus on computer coding and trade that skill for food. Comparative advantage is this idea that everyone can win bigger if they play into their strengths. Lastly, let's take a look at a common model called the circular flow model. The circular flow model illustrates how money, goods, and services move between households and firms through markets in an economy. Households sell their labor to firms, they earn cash from it, and then they turn around and spend that cash on goods that the firms make. So the circular flow model is a big loop made up of small micro decisions. The model is made up of two types of markets. Firstly, the production market, where goods are bought, and second, the resource market, where resources, like time, are sold. Let's do a quick recap of everything that was covered in this video. First off, we looked at scarcity, the core problem of economics. Finite resources and infinite wants. Trade-offs, giving up something to get something else. Opportunity cost, the value of the next best alternative you give up when making a choice. Constrained optimization, people try to optimize their life in the face of constraints. Production possibilities curve, a graph showing the maximum combinations of two goods you can produce with fixed resources. Comparative advantage, producing something at a lower opportunity cost than others, its specialization leading to trade. And lastly, the circular flow model. It shows how money, goods, and services flow. Well, I hope that video was helpful for you and gave you a basic and introductory knowledge of economics. Thanks for watching.